It's two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all? Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good, Dan. Good to be with you.
Really good to be with you. My God, we had this conversation, meeting each other. It's been a couple months, I think now, almost. It's been a while. And I just remember, like, man, you live sort of near where I live, and I'm like, we started talking tennis even and stuff, and which, by the way, I just played tennis on Monday for the first time in a few months, and it was amazing. We went to the Crystal Lake Racket Club. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, I used to play there because I lived in Woodstock growing up.
Oh, cool. So one of my bros, we went over there and played. And cool tip for people in the area: if you go during off hours, you can get a court for $10. It's kind of fun, I'm like, wow, because I was gonna go like even a half an hour earlier, and they're like, okay, yeah, you're not your guests and everything. That's $10 extra each. The court's 26 and whatever. And I'm like, okay, all right, so I guess. Then my buddy's like, I've rebooked this for a half hour later. It's only $10. I'm like, all right, we're in. Cool. That sounds
Yeah,
good.
you can't. I was gonna say, getting a tennis court indoors for $10, that's unheard of.
Can't beat it. So it's the off season, winter hours and stuff. So that's how they do it. But anyway, my point is, like, that's something for when we talk mental health. We're on that topic right now, and that has got to be really near the top of the list. Things that absolutely are huge for my mental health. Getting out there, and I've always had concerns over the more recent years around low back and stuff. But I don't know. I think I've got to a place where I'm probably fine with it. It's just I just had to learn. You just can't do some of the stuff you used to do. You can't go flying around the court, throwing your body all over the place, or you're probably going to get hurt. Let some balls go. It's not the end of the world. We're just here to have fun.
Yep, absolutely. And it's great that you have that as an outlet. Any kind of exercise. I just recently started working out more, and what prompted it was we had a line. Our basement TV had a line in it, a red line, and apparently that happens if you have a power surge, which I didn't know until the guy at Best Buy told me, do you have a surge protector? I'm like, of course. He said, well, how old is it? I'm like, 2009. He said, yeah, they don't last that long. And apparently that line's there. So I got a new TV, and I hooked up our sound system, a new sound system, because ours was broken, that hooks up to the speakers in the basement, and we have a little workout room. And there's something about having the music in the workout room that got me to start exercising again, like every day. And I'm just down there. I love the treadmill, and it's just a different vibe than just a quiet, sterile, basement gym kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, setting up a nice environment, I could see that being motivating. I just want to hang out down here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do for working out is just turn on music and dancing. I mean, just like that for cardio, and then I'll throw in my whatever boxing, martial arts that I've learned over the years, and just throw a little bit of that in there. Again, nothing too aggressive. My body can't handle it anymore. especially if you don't do it like constantly. But yeah, you just try to. When I go to do weights, usually I'm not like enthused, because one of the reasons is because I go later in the day, just with my schedule the way it is at the moment. It's like, all right, gotta go work out. But once I'm there, usually I get into it. I'm like, this feels good. I
It
can
does. It
do
does.
one more.
It's funny though that you mentioned the dancing, because I do that too, but only for a party of one. Like I'm not doing it at the local gym, but in my basement, we got a mirror set up, and with whether it's the music or listen to a podcast, listen to a book, I listen to that stuff too. And sometimes my body just starts moving and I start dancing, and I realize in the midst of my dance, like, this is really good workout.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not like too intense and crazy, but it's like just like my speed. And my wife's come down a couple times. She's like, "What are you doing?" Hey,
Yeah,
this is me.
everybody in my family is very used to me being a goof, so they're just, oh, hey, Dad, by now. Maybe a little funny smile here and there, but if I go to parties and they put on the music and I start dancing where nobody's dancing, everybody looks at me like I'm drunk. What are you drunk? What's wrong with you, Dan? I'm like, hey, just having a good time. What's the issue? I mean, everybody should be up dancing. Like,
Well,
so
I admire the courage, because that tells me that you don't care what anybody thinks.
not really. I mean, not generally speaking. It's like, because we have to be beyond all that, right? I mean, like, there's been times I don't do it as much now, but where I would walk down the sidewalk praying aloud too, like when I'm on my walks in the morning, I'm like, and God is all there is, and God this and whatever. And I would say it even, I would say it really loud, but like, I'd be really, like, if somebody was nearby, they'd hear me, I'm sure. I'm like, if they hear me, good, that's good. Let's get it in them too. And so I think, yeah, if we're, the more we can just get out of those inhibitions, I think it's so helpful, men and women, all of us, to just, because as children, we don't think about that as much until we're told, like, whoa, you're weird. Oh, you shouldn't be like
Right.
there's naturally like, well, spazzes sometimes, right?
Well, have you always been that way, like really comfortable, like
No,
just kind of being yourself?
no.
No, what were you like, and what changed?
Yeah, hey, I love it when it flips around. People ask me the questions. It's fun. Let's see what flipped that around. I'm trying to think exactly when. I just know at some point, like, I know, like, when I was called Mr. Invisible in high school because I was just so to myself and everything. I was very guarded around everybody because there was a little bullying and growing up and stuff with really just mostly one guy. I mean, it's just one kid here and there, and it wasn't even that often. But it just hugely put up my walls. Like, just I don't know, it stirred something up in my being, and I was really kind of, yeah, with all this anger and everything. And then at some point, I don't know if it was, maybe it might have been grad school. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was earlier than that. I slowly was coming out of my shell, like in college, and then with going into sales right out of college, because I'm like, I need to start showing up, and then I went back to grad school, and when I went back to grad school, I think, yeah, that was when I started, like, okay, it's time to really express myself more. And then it just kept building over the years. And then to where I'd having these live events and people there. And, I'd be the one dancing all over the place. And most of my participants, I would not. Maybe just, how they do, like, yeah, all right. I'm going to be in the mad bad all over the place. I just realized I have to express myself. That's a key to well-being. That's a key to so-called success, right? You have to express yourself. You have to be yourself. And
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Authenticity is
yeah,
something that we all have a journey through, like finding that authentic us, and then having the steps forward to
mhm.
have more confidence in that full nature of who we are to show up.
Right. Because and also with the channeling I do and everything, even somebody, we've talked about this person. says when I was channeling Jesus, not Jesus, I was channeling, I think, Gandhi, the energy of Gandhi. And I remember sharing a clip with him, and he was listening, he was into it, listening, he's curious, and he listens to it, and then this is all like over like Facebook Messenger. This was way in earlier days too,
Yeah.
I think. And then he's like, well, I don't know. It sounds like you talking to me. I'm like, what? I mean, like, okay, whatever. You don't have to believe in it. I mean, I don't care. But yeah, you face ridicule when you show up differently. You always got the repel and attractor factor, right? Like people are totally into it and wow and all that stuff, and there's people like, wow, what's that nonsense about? Right? So but and I always look at, when I'm in my right mind, I realize always like, okay, that's just them. Like they're inhibited then, or if they think I'm too, like, boy, you're so powerful, and I don't know, it's too much for me. It's like, yeah, your power is too much for you right now, right? Like whatever it is, or whatever it is about you're a scam artist. I've even heard that from me just because whatever, you charge money, you do different things, and people judge you. And I've heard all kinds of, I get called everything eventually. So, but I just be like, deep down inside, I'm like, yeah, they probably think they're a scam, or life's a scam, right? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always like that correlation in their consciousness that's saying that to them. So
Yeah,
I
I just
think we're,
shared that with my daughter yesterday. She was she's on new volleyball kind of thing, new group, hundreds of girls, and she heard some girls talking. She overheard, and it wasn't very nice. This girl was really angry and frustrated with something. And I said to and she was complaining about like the coaches or something. She's like, oh, why are they bringing so many of these girls over here? They shouldn't be here. And I was telling my daughter, I said, that's more of a her thing than a you thing or anybody else. Like she's disclosing her insecurities, her inadequacies, her fears, frustration, coming out as frustrations. And so just recognize, it's not about you, because my daughter was one of the ones that kind of came over from one group to another group. And it's like, hey, she's not talking about you. She's talking about her.
right. Exactly.
And that's kind of what I hear you saying too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we have to realize, and then if we're triggered, of course, obviously, we gotta look, okay, what's going on in me, or it's stirring in me, and then
Yeah.
deal with that. But we can't be afraid to just meet those parts of ourselves, like, because you meet more of those parts of yourself when you express more of yourself. Yeah, like yesterday, I was being very, I don't know, thorough in talking to a potential client. I'm like, listen, you could tell me you don't need my help all you want, but what about this? What about that? What about this other thing? I just, and it comes from caring, it comes from caring, because I'm like, if I just want to be like, oh, I don't want to be a salesman, let me just jump out of this and say you're fine. I'm like, okay, are you really okay? Let's talk this through, and then what's your plan? Well, let's look at, oh yeah, maybe you don't have this all together, right? The way you're saying you do. Maybe you could use that help, like really being diligent.
Yeah.
And part of me doesn't want to do that, So sometimes when I go further than maybe I would go another time, it doesn't feel comfortable all the time. But it's like, even if I went too far, like I get to face that part of myself. Like, okay, how am I feeling? Did I go too far, or is it more like my ideas about what I was doing that is bothering me, right? Or is it
Right.
something earlier that happened the day and that carried over that moment? Or, like you just break it down later, like, hey, what a review, right? Like, what's going on with me? Why was I feeling that way? And like just the conscious, this is two conscious guys, like just taking the time to review things. And so it's okay to, I think we're so worried about making a mistake, doing something wrong, being, rejected, right? That
Right.
we, that, that's just, this doesn't do anybody any good, as in my opinion, ultimately in the big game, so to speak.
No, agree. And the review is critical. The review, that's how we learn. It's to look back like, hey, but if we're beating ourselves up, that's not constructive. That's missing the opportunity to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more we can show up, the more we're inspiring people, is what I find. And yeah, there'll always be somebody that's mad or thinks you're wrong, and now they're angry even, right? And okay, you don't need to be if you're so-called fully awake. You're like, I'm not like violently attacking you or something. Like, there shouldn't be no real reaction, right? If you're a fully awake, enlightened person, you would be like, oh, okay, whatever, right? It'd be totally neutral, or maybe even enjoy it or whatever. So obviously it's not, about us. It's about what's going on with them, like we said. So with all that in mind, like I wanted to talk about, go more direct now to the mental health journey,
Sure.
because you've got a big story with that. And I keep telling my story, but that's why I bring you guys on. So I don't do like 100 episodes just talking about my own stuff.
Yeah,
But
that would be like you'd have an audience of one.
right. I just love listening to myself talk about my story. So, but you definitely, it's somebody that's accomplished a number of things, and books you've written and whatnot, and you've got whatever, so much impact you've done. I'll let you talk about it, but you used to have a software company, for example, you told me, and that sounded like it was a pretty good success. So yeah, tell me about your journey, like, because it sounds like, as far as like, and then the typical programming maybe you were following, like as a man too, yeah, go provide, go get, go be successful and all that. Like, from what I heard from you, I don't know if it's true, but it sounds like you pretty much bought into that, right? And
Mhm.
and then it led down a certain path. So we'd love to hear your journey.
Yeah. No, thanks, Dan. So, yeah, I built and sold a tech company. And we're pretty successful. We had about 150 people or so, team members, at the time I sold, doing about 20 million a year in sales. We just about reached 20 that year that I sold in 2010. My interest, I didn't have the whole thing. I had part of it, but I was one of the founders, and I grew up really recognizing that I wanted stuff. Like there was a buddy of mine, this is so silly, but in fourth grade, we're on the way to the mall. He and I are in the back seat. His mom's driving to one of the malls in the Chicago area. And I looked over and he's got Oshkosh Bagosh jeans. I'm like, he always wears Oshkosh Bagosh jeans. And for me, they're like the coolest looking jeans. And I was wearing, I don't know, Wrangler Special or whatever it was. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I asked my mom, like, hey, can I get Oshkosh Bagosh? She's like, hey, we don't have the money for that. And boy, I'm like, okay, how do I make money? So I became very focused early. Like, how do I make money? And one of the things that my parents did is they would pay half for certain things. Like if I wanted a bike, like, hey, we'll pay half. So I'd have to earn the other half with a paper route or detasseling corn, or, I had 14 jobs before I graduated college doing all kinds of different stuff. And I loved making money. I loved the reward of being able to get what I wanted. I got a Macintosh in 1984. I was in 7th grade and paid half of that. So I learned, like, okay, money means something that I can get what I want. I never did buy those Oshkosh Bagosh jeans, but it was very much ingrained in me that performance was necessary to have what you want. My grandfather was an entrepreneur after World War II. He was in the Navy, started a carpet business, and they carpeted a lot of the Chicagoland, the homes and stuff. So it did very well. And my mom would tell stories around the dining room table about him. And I'm like, my hero. I want to build something. And I always felt inadequate. There's no way, like, what would I even build? I had no ideas. I was more science oriented, didn't even go to business school, got an engineering degree. It's like, how could I ever build something? Well, lo and behold, at 26 years old, after working at GE and doing some things to build a little bit of business acumen, I started this tech company and learned as I went. And I poured everything into it because there was this sense of needing to, in order to provide for my family, just as you said. And I remember 5 years into it, came home after celebrating with my partner and our employees, like, hey, this is great. We're rocking it. And my wife wasn't there, but she was waiting for me at home. And she said, so how long are you going to do this? And I said, well, do what? she's like, well, the company is called Jenica, still exists, great company. Jenica, it's like, I said, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, you're not really making any money 5 years in. I said, well, and I felt insulted at the time. I was pretty immature. But it reminded me, I'm like, hey, I never thought about failing. Like, well, failure is not an option. We're going to succeed. And we did, but it took longer than expected. But it was long nights. I mean, I'd be down in the city a couple times a week, networking, sales meetings, traveling. Like, I mean, it was a top priority. And she thankfully, was able to take care. We have 5 kids. She was able to take care of a lot of the house things. But I was absent a lot of that time, doing the business building. And it was really important to me to prove that I was worthy, good, able, because I just had so many inadequacies and insecurities on the inside. On the outside, I was confident. On the inside, I was not. Now I'm both. It's more integrated. I'm more confident outside and in. A lot of insecurities growing up. So selling the business in 2010, my interest, which is an interesting story in itself, because in 2006, I was in my office and I heard this inner voice say, hey, Mark, it's time to sell the business. And I got a little bit more information about what I was going to do next. And I laughed. I'm like, because I didn't know who's talking inside my head.
Right.
And I said, okay, God, if that's you, you're going to have to show me the way. And like a breadcrumb trail, every little step came, and it led to growing, stabilizing the business, and eventually, selling and moving on. Well, 9 months later, I ended up in the psych ward after a week of insanity, hearing voices and walls moving. And I'd be in conversations, with people, and I'd hear their thoughts before they spoke. And then they'd say the words, and it's like, wait, I heard that before they said it. Like, how is that possible? It was like just unusual stuff. But I was always growing up Catholic, had a strong faith. And so it was all about, okay, Holy Spirit and God, and like, hey, guidance. And so very much a mystical environment where my mom would pray for intercession from St. Teresa, little flower. And just before her prayers answered, she'd get flowers, roses. And it's like, I wanted to be like my mom. Like, how is it possible? She must be really holy if she's getting her prayers answered. Because I'd ask for stuff like a new bike or whatever. And it's like, where is it? As a kid. So when this started happening, this mystical stuff, I was feeling favored and like, oh, this is great. Like, oh, there's something special happening. And I was really interested in this. But it ended up after a week of doing that and really leaning in on it. And there's some really, unusual stories in there that I've written about, and you could ask if you want. But I was hauled out of my house by paramedics and spent a week in the behavioral health facility here in town. And that was 2011. And it was a 3-year journey, to go in and out of hospitals and take different medicines and all that. And the doctor told me there's no cure. Plan on being on medication the rest of your life. And the most they knew about the brain at the time, they learned in the 90s. And so somehow in my spirit, I knew like there was a path. But there were some pivotal moments where I prayed like, okay, God, if there's a way to heal this, like show me the way. And I was shown. Fully healthy today, off all the medications, and started a nonprofit to educate people on pathways. We interview integrative and functional medicine practitioners, really help bring awareness and hope. We have programs and coaching and, all kinds of, really unique things in that part of, my life. And because once you go through something like that, it's time to give back. But one of the things that happened over and really led me into this consciousness stuff is there was an integration. That voice that I heard that I thought was outside of me, turns out at the core of who we are, there's this source connection, right? There's this wholeness. And we put on these masks. We put on like, how do I get approval and acceptance and love and all that we seek? And so I've got this big mask out here. And there were these really pivotal moments where, kind of like that voice in 2006, where it breaks through. It's like, wait, this source breaks through and like, hey, your life's going in a different direction. Like we need to move over here, whatever it might be. And over time, whereas it felt separate from me, like almost out there, I realized, no, it's right here. And it kept getting closer and closer and integrating more and more until I realized, like, wait, I was denying the true nature of who I was for most of my life in order to put on a good face. And the healing process was really an unwinding of that, which I don't think a single person on the planet knows intellectually from their brain how to unwind it, but in the spirit, the answers are there. The process is there. It's all written in our essence. And so there are mechanisms, whether it's meditation, a great teacher, a divine intervention, there's all kinds of ways that it can really come to help reframe, rewire, reconnect such that the full expression of a person can come online. And when we don't do that, we're going to experience things like bipolar, depression, things of that nature, because we're out of alignment with who we truly are. We're buying into someone's story, or we feel stuck and we won't take the action to get unstuck, or trapped. And sometimes the foods we eat, the medication we're on, or what have you, can help retain the stuckness, like almost lock in those walls. So sometimes there's a purification process that's really needed. And we've all been familiar with fasting. Well, sometimes we need to fast, under care of doctor. Maybe you need to fast from your medication, because maybe what helped you at one point isn't helping you anymore. Maybe you need to fast from certain foods, or even fast from certain exercises, or fast from sitting on the couch watching Netflix, whatever it is that you want to fast from. But something like change up your routine so that you can get more nourishment and life in, and help move out of the way anything that blocks you being 100% aligned with that life force. Because I think that's what's possible, that we can be.
Yeah. Okay. So, wow. Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot, big life there story. Yeah, I don't know. The one thought that I had earlier on when you were talking there too was they started talking about like you were hearing what they're going to say before they said it and all that. And I think the only time I've deeply experienced that was when I was at a meditation retreat, and I was like, oh my God, I can hear everybody's thoughts at this table. What's going on? Like, and so I thought that was very interesting, at the time. So, I mean, that's why, that's why I encourage and I work with people on this stuff too, of like these capacities that are natural that we have. Like we're like, whoa, like, we're out in the bush with the shamans. They were like, what's your problem? Like,
Right. Well,
this is ordinary stuff. I mean, come on. But to our experience, it's completely unusual. So when you start, we show up out of those boxes, like I did too on my journey. People say there's something wrong with you. You need help. All that stuff. And I'm sure you did have some dysfunction or whatever along with it, because it's like it's disabling, because all the other stuff was it's all like dismantling. So it's like the structure gets really chaotic, right? So it's like, yeah, all right, we need to do something to be like supported through that.
Right.
So, but
rather than shut it down, I think. Like, I mean, one of the things, and you probably experienced this as well, it sounds like, when you have an experience that you've never experienced before, right? When I had multiple experiences where I physically felt the touch of a human hand or hands without anyone in the room. One of the stories is that I pulled a back muscle. I was home alone. I was on the floor. I couldn't move. Tried to get up, and it just hurt so much. I just lay back down. I'm like, almost like I give up. I'm like, all right, I give up. And I felt these invisible hands like roll me over onto my stomach so that they could access my back, and then repair It was like a repair process going on,
Mm.
almost like a stitching up or whatever it was, and then rolled me back over, then got behind me and lifted me up.
Mm-hmm.
Not fully, because I could start to move, but was lifting me up. I stood up and was moving. Pain was totally gone. I look around and there's nobody there.
Right.
And so, well, how do you reconcile that? Because telling that story to the psychologist, it's like, okay, let's write you a prescription, or
Right. Right. Exactly.
a psychiatrist. You're going to get a prescription really quickly to deaden that. Like, hey,
Right.
you're not supposed to experience that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't understand it. We don't know what it is or what have you, even though there's a real strong belief in collective consciousness and there's more than we can see. There's still this like, yeah, we don't want people going around doing that. And I didn't understand it and didn't have any resource around me to say, hey, Mark, you know what? Let's just embrace this. Let's just be thankful, and move on, or whatever the guidance would have been.
Mm-hmm.
But that would have been really helpful at the time. I didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think is really incredibly useful for a human being is to know that they're not alone. Had I known you that time and you said, oh, Mark, I've had, listen, I've had this happen, be like, oh, wait, so I'm not like totally nuts here. There's something going on.
Yes.
Even if I don't understand it.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, we've all had, people have gone through this stuff. Like we've all had various experiences. I mean, we each could write whole books, probably all these different interesting little experiences we had as you go through that journey. Right. I mean, for me, yeah, like literally that is what happened. I don't know if I told you this. We've talked so many things in our first conversation. But when I was a teenager, when I went to see a psychiatrist for the first time, with depression, but then I went in, I started saying, even though I wasn't really doing it at the time, I was like, I could move objects, I could blow things up, I told them it was a sense like I feel like I could, and so it's scary. So why would I try it? Because you're not told that this is a real thing, right? That you could actually do something like that. So yeah, literally that person was like, he literally did the very interesting thing back in the day. Like, very interesting, very interesting. By the time he's done, I think it was bipolar II or something, with delusions of grandeur or whatever, and then meds, like it's just the usual stuff. And ultimately, I mean, I think he said a couple of good things. And one of the things I remember he said is, he's like, be more confident. You're a charismatic guy or whatever. And I was really inward at the time. So I'm like, oh, okay. That was helpful. But other than that, it was like mostly just, okay, I was hurt, but then labeled medication, let's get rid of those ideas. Because it's who knows where it all comes from. It's a fascinating question itself, with witch hunts and everything else through all the years in history. And people, I guess, will say it's all control. You just want to control it. Maybe I don't know if that's.
I think it's without real tools. It's a challenging thing, and so I don't blame the medical community for even using the medication, because hey, maybe that was better than having insane asylums. Because now people could somewhat function. But now I think we have another opportunity to upgrade, and that is to bring, there's so many people who now are on the other side of it. Like, I have such a deep understanding now of what I went through and how I got well, that it's something that is very transmutable to other people. It's like, okay, well, this is a process. This is a process of integration. And one of my favorite stories is of the caterpillar transforming to the butterfly. It's like, well, the caterpillar, as it's transforming, it actually the whole body dissolves. Like, so the caterpillar physical structure essentially is dead. It dissolves, and then it recongeals into a butterfly with wings, apparently. And then, has to bust through its little chrysalis, to strengthen its wings and take flight. And it's like, imagine and I write about this in one of my recent books, like, just imagine the flight where this caterpillar consciousness only knew leaves and twigs and a tree, and it was always grounded. Well, now all of a sudden it can fly over the water and go up to the flowers quickly and go from flower to flower. It's like, oh, imagine how amazing that must be for the butterfly. And that's what my experience is with this. It's like, I didn't, in the midst of it, it's like this dissolving process of, consciousness. Who am I? Where am I? Like, how do I, move forward? And there's a dying process of the old. And then there's this like awakening process of, wait, this is different. New skills, new abilities, new things start to come online. The old didn't go away, but now it can be used in such a grander purpose. And I think that's where the grandiosity does come in. People with bipolar, yeah, grandiosity is there, but it's not because it's bad. It's just unhinged. It's sort of like new. It's like, wait a minute, I've got all these grand thoughts. Well,
Right.
Well, that's because when you come out the other side, the caterpillar coming out the butterfly, well, maybe the caterpillar is like, oh my gosh, I can imagine flying.
Right.
And the other caterpillar psychologist is like, okay, this dude's nuts. We got to, give him some pills so he stops thinking he can fly. It's like, well, dude can fly. He's just got to go transform first before he can fly and get the wings. There's a process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, human beings have a process too. And that's what I want to, awaken people to, if they're not already, like start to let people know, like, hey, we have a human dynamic transformative process to leave behind the smallness of who we are and step more fully into the massive awareness that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to what you started this conversation with, this part of the conversation with, that hearing other people's thoughts. It got hard for me. So I remember praying one day, I'm like, hey, God, I have a boundaries issue. Like something's because I didn't want to hear everyone's thoughts because I couldn't discern what's my thought and what's theirs. You probably experienced something similar. And so I remember praying, I'm like, okay, I release my boundaries. Whatever I had in the past, I let go of those. I allow for God to transform those boundaries into something healthy for me, and then mature those over time. So as I can handle this stuff, like then, open it up if it's necessary. And if it's not, then it's not. Well, that was really helpful for me. Just that simple thing, because our words are powerful, and when we retrain our bodies and, to really do what it is that's in our highest and best interest, wow, I mean, they're incredible. But that actually led to a change in boundaries, and I stopped hearing other people's thoughts for a while. And now, if it's necessary, important for me to know something, there'll be a moment where it's like, I'll just have this drop of awareness, right? You know what that's like.
Yeah.
You have this drop of awareness. It's like, okay, sometimes there's no action to take. It's just an awareness. And sometimes there's action to take.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this recognition of, wait, I'm interconnected with every living thing on the planet, which is another thing. As someone's entering into the mental health crisis, it's like they're experiencing it too, but it's wild and wacky.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you really heal, it stops being wild and wacky and it starts becoming integrated. It's like now you have someone who's more whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we're both, got the diagnosis bipolar, and all that sort of stuff. So we've had that journey, and but I feel like, when you look at anxiety, look at depression, all these different, words we use to describe what people are feeling, what's going on for them. They're surface diagnosis. It's like, what's actually going on for you? Let's really get in there. That's why I'm so into with being able to, use my ability, like we all have, to tune into people and see what's really going on. Okay, tell me what's going on. Well, I don't know. I got this problem in my throat and it gets raspy sometimes. All right, let me tune into your energy and see what's creating that. Like, we have those abilities. They go to 100 doctors, but one medical intuitive or somebody like me can tune into it, and medical intuitive probably is better than I am because I'm not always focused on the medical stuff. But we could just tune right into it and say, this is what's going on. This is, and I'm also getting like, we could do this clearing process, or, use these things to clear up your throat, or whatever, like get to the root causes, or even, just different things that you can do. And sometimes there's simple answers too. That's what really got my attention when you're talking. Sometimes the answers are simple. I think that's important for all of us when we're having stress or mental health issues or whatever, like to remember, because it even happens to me to this day. Like when I get like stressed or whatever, right? It's like the mind will start to get dramatic, right? Oh, this means that means this, and what a mess. It's going to take forever to figure this thing out and get to the other side of what I'm dealing with or how I'm feeling, or it's a big issue. And it's like, honest to God, like sometimes all you have to do is, like this morning, I was having some stuff come up. I sat down, I just started channeling answers. By the time I was done, I wouldn't say I was 1,000,000% better, but I was better. All I needed to do is hear the messages.
Yeah.
There's peace within every scenario. Like that's one of the messages that came through. Like just even hearing that, like just a simple message, like even that one message out of a number of ones, like a few came through, like it's just relaxing. But we think, oh my God, maybe I need a lot of therapy, maybe I need a lot of this and that. Maybe not. I mean, maybe, just maybe not. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying maybe not. Sometimes we just need a little bit of more love, a little more attention, a little more something that we give to ourselves, and or get help from others or whatever. Or so many things, right? So many tools, but we often get very dramatic when it isn't always so dramatic, is my point.
Right. And what you're talking about, by the way, about like kind of checking in and asking questions and getting answers, like one of the things that I've learned in my coaching, it's like everyone has the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
But if you're off, if your energy's off, if you're in hostility, or if you're in, like you said, where your brain's like, anxious and stuff, that's not a place to get the answers from, because then that's going to be negative and destructive in terms of what you're going to get, that propels that forward. So to find a way to get centered, and so whenever, and you probably do this as well, whenever we check in, it's always get centered first.
Yes.
Get into what I call alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've worked with people, what I love doing is supporting them and getting into alignment, and then inviting them and often leading them through a Q&A and letting them know, okay, when you ask the question, don't answer it. Like, let your brain like go to the back and just ask the question, breathe and wait. And invariably, depending on how connected someone is with who they truly are, an answer is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and that's something to build upon. And people will receive it differently. Some will hear it verbally, some will get an image in their mind, some will have just a sense, like a knowing. And go with, if you're listening to this, go with what your strength is. I remember one woman, I was doing a group session, it's kind of like an introduction thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she was really jealous of another woman who had these unique gifts, like she could talk to angels and stuff. And I said, well, you do realize she doesn't see these angels with her physical eye. And she said, no, I thought she did. And the woman was there, and she's like, no, I see him in my inner vision. And it was like, comparison's a really, bad combination with this, because like we project our perception of what someone else is experiencing based on our interpretation of the words. So she said she was seeing angels, talking angels, and this woman's thinking like, angels are hanging out physically, where she could see them, and this woman wanted to see them. Yeah. So I turned it back to her. I said, so, what has happened for you in your life where it's sort of kind of this mystical? And she's like, oh, I know something. She said, every time, not every time. She said, it's often that when the phone will ring, I'll know who it is before I pick up. She was working in an office at the time, not with caller ID or whatever. And she just kind of would know who it was. And I'm like, wow, what a superpower. That's really cool. I said, so instead of comparing yourself to someone who can see angels, celebrate that you have this intuitive ability of knowing who's trying to reach out to you. Like, just celebrate that. And if you can celebrate that and move into appreciation, that's going to expand from there, and other spiritual gifts will start to come, as you accept yourself, and look within rather than, well, who am I, compared to that person or that person or that person.
Yeah, that's a foundational teaching I got a long time ago with gifts, and like especially like our ability to perceive things. Like, okay, if you're clairvoyant, primarily, then focus on your clairvoyant gifts, and then the other ones will come along, more easily and everything. And so like there's always been that thing where people are like, they want to have the clairvoyance, right? Like, I want to be able to see it. That's the real intuition. I think people are getting better educated now, but it's probably still around. I haven't heard it lately, but people be like, I want to be clairvoyant. That's the real deal, or whatever. And I'd have to train people again and again, like that doesn't matter. However, you're getting your access to infinite intelligence really doesn't matter. If it's visual, if it's a feeling, if it's a knowing, if it's whatever, however you're getting your access, just focus on that, And for me, like, I do get a lot of images, but a lot of times my images aren't like extraordinarily clear or anything, like it's like a whole movie playing out, it's all real, and like, but yeah, I have had experiences like, but to chase these things, that's just like this idea that I definitely, I wanted to have those experiences at one point, so I'm like, okay, I want to have it, then set the intention, all of a sudden you're having those experiences, right? But I realized it didn't matter either. Like, I'm like, yeah, I could pull those things off, whatever, whatever you kind of want in a way, but you don't need to, you don't, it's I think it's wiser to appreciate what comes natural to you. And if you want to expand beyond that, you want to have more fun expanding into more and more what's available there, you can. And so, but yeah, I love that whole thing of appreciating like the gifts that you have. And I'll say this too, Mark, and then whatever you were going to say is, like, sometimes people don't even appreciate like a gift, like having a lot of love in their heart for everybody. Like that is such a gift. That's a divine gift.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Everybody feels that way, right? I'm like, hell no. Not everybody has this palpable love in their heart for every human being like you do. No. And there's so many gifts like that we just take for granted. And so I love that you mentioned.
not even spiritual gifts, but you remind me of a number of people who I've known who have had really amazing like gifts in the world, and they just assume, just like you said there, like, oh, well, everyone can do that.
Right.
Like, no, not everyone can do what you just said.
Right.
That's you got something unique going on there.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, true, but one of the things I found out is that people can do a lot more than they realize, at least at a minimum, because when people have learned how to do like the tuning into people, they often graduate from working with me getting very similar testimonials to what I get. Oh my God, I couldn't believe how accurate it was and everything. So, I mean, and yet the way I used to put it, and I don't know if it's even true, I used to tell my students when I used to do regular classes on this, it's like, I'm like, like there's Michael Jordan, then there's everybody else. I guess it's kind of like that around here. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. It's just my fun way of putting it. But you all can play basketball. You all could get really good. You all could be awesome. So don't worry about that. I mean, just because sometimes they put it so far away from themselves. Oh, I don't even know if I'll ever be able to do it. Like my point was, okay, I know maybe I'm Michael Jordan, but whatever. Michael, you probably get similar testimonials to me by the time you're done with this process. And it just blew me away how many times people would demonstrate the ability to do it all and still question it afterwards. I don't even know if that wasn't nothing, right? Nothing happened, right? Nothing was accurate, right? I didn't say one thing that was accurate, I'm sure. Yeah, you did. Well, I still don't believe it. Like, on your belief system still, right? And so there's so many things like that. So I guess part of the message today, as we're beginning to, wrap up a little bit, is just like, you guys, you're unlimited, and whatever your experience is, embrace what's unfolding for you. I think if I get in my mind about who I am and how all the experiences I've had in my life and what they're like, yeah, I could think I'm an insane person, but whatever that is, even, right? But put myself in a box. Oh, they're defective. Oh, what are they screw it. They kicked that box too hard or something upstairs before I sent it out. It's like, no, it's all divine. It's how I see wholeness. I don't see dysfunction. I see wholeness within the sense of dysfunction. There's a wholeness within it, right? So anyway, I could go on and on.
Well, I know we are wrapping up a little bit, but the one of the things that you pointed out, that basketball thing with Jordan, is pretty funny. But I was thinking of basketball before you mentioned that. It's like you mentioned wanting to experience clairvoyance, and then you experienced it, right? And you set an intention. I think of basketball or any sport, and you've got these fundamental drills. You got to learn to, you have to dribble, you have to shoot, you have to pass. You've got to know like where to be on the court. All the different things that go into performing. And so you don't always dribble, you don't always pass. So I think that's my experience with these spiritual gifts. It's like, okay, you're not always using clairvoyance, you're not always using clairaudience or whatever the skills are, but you do develop these as you come more and more into alignment with the true nature of who you are. One gift leads to another, and there's this collection. And then I wanted to wrap that part up with, think of like the Avengers or superheroes. Not every superhero has every superpower, right? If they did, that'd be kind of boring. It's much more interesting, like to celebrate, like, oh wow, Iron Man can do this like cool innovation stuff, and the Hulk can turn into this green like big guy, and whatever and he's like really science engineering. And Captain America, the CEO of the group, like he's got his like shield. It's like it makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we're interesting that way too, because we all have this collection, and we might have a set of gifts and skills. Like, yeah, like you said, focus on those and develop those, because they can be developed. They are skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And just so people understand, like what we're saying is like a lot of times what can make you well is to start using these gifts that you have, these capacities that you have. Maybe you're struggling because you're not using your intuition more, or your psychic gifts, or whatever you want to call all these different gifts,
or physical gifts.
Yeah, right, or whatever, any of the gifts, all different gifts. So but to when you utilize them and step into that, and how it can transform your mental health, deepen your awakening, or awaken you, or whatever, and all that stuff. So yeah, this is really good. I don't think we've done a conversation like this before on here on this series. So this is really amazing.
Good. Well, by the way, your intuition, when it comes on with regard to your mental health, that'll lead you to the right doctors. Like, I mean, I use that to find the doctors that I ultimately got well with. And they, for the first time, tested my blood work and, my nutrients levels. And they saw, well, hey, this is off, this is off, this is off. And that was corrected with nutrients. Like, well, wait a minute. None of my other doctors prior to that, no psychiatrists that I was with, integrative psychiatrists do this, by the way, but I wasn't with an integrative one early. They didn't test anything. They just like based on behaviors, like, well, why not look under the hood? Look what's going on in the system. Now I have a belief. I don't think there's science on it at this point. Maybe there will be in the future, but my belief is that those physical malformations, if you will, the chemical imbalances, are derived from denials that are within us of who we truly are, of our greatness, of that divine, gift and union, with our creator. Like when we separate from that, like that's a rift. And then we're going to start making choices that show up in the body. It's like, well, if it's in the body already, it was already in the spirit well before it was in the body. So to unwind, you got to do the spiritual stuff, as a key, but you have to also do the physical, mental, emotional work. It takes all of it to really, if you really want to get well, you can. That's my firm belief, unless you're, struggling with like a birth defect or damage that happened in an accident that's physical, right? But I think this kind of normal stuff that we're talking about in the mental health world, treat the whole person, and there's a real positive chance that people can get well.
Yeah, I mean, even with the examples you gave, even then, there's a chance people can get well because
Yes.
that's
I just don't know that world
Right.
as much.
Right. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like definitely, very consistently proven, if people have the type of issues we've talked about today. So, yeah, and I was going to ask you more about that nutrition. I'm glad you brought that up because I was like, I bet you had nutritional issues because I got that right away, especially when you started saying functional and integrative stuff, because that was my vibe too. I'm like, I bet you had some nutritional stuff because that's something they find consistently too. I mean, a minute they get the right, nutrients into people, sometimes that alone lifts them out of a sense of despair or anxiety or depression. You got guys out there. What's that guy's name? He says you need methylfolate or whatever. I don't know if he's, he claims people get on methylfolate and their anxiety disappears often, and all this stuff. All these different ideas are coming out, and so it's good. It's good. That's why I love this podcasting format too. We get a lot more of this information out there. So, okay, well, Mark, this has been amazing. We could talk for hours more, I'm sure.
Yes.
And I believe people will really be fascinated to connect with you further. You have a number of ways people can connect with you, I believe, ultimately. But where could people reach out to you?
Yeah. So there's a few different places. So I do business work. You can look at optimalbeing.live, our mental health work with a great podcast, lots of great resources is journeysdream.org. I've written a bunch of books. Most of them are collected at markhattas.com/book or books or something. But if you just go to markhattas.com, you'll find it. And I just got inspired to write a book called The Lowly Prophet. And it's drafted. I've got beta people reading it. I've got a cover draft, and it's a fascinating story. And I've never heard of Substack really before, but I was introduced to it, and I started a Substack called The Lowly. I think it's markhattas.com or markhattas.substack.com. And it's for The Lowly Prophet, introducing the book. And that's more of a spiritual journey. It's kind of a fictional story with Jesus teaching the main character like how to get healthy, and there's these mystical, like, cool stories in there. It's a lot of fun. So I encourage people to go and check that out as well.
Yeah, that's great. So go ahead and check out everything that he's up to. I think there's probably even more that he has in his bag of tricks over there. Good stuff, of course, but that's definitely a big part of it right there, a big chunk. And yeah, I'm just so appreciative for the journey you've been on and how you've moved through it. And how you've really come through, like, to the other side of it, really. I mean, and there's always more expansion, always more evolution. But how far you've come with that. And I just want to tell everybody out there again, just remember, like, it's all there for you, and it's there for you starting today. When I broke through in mental health, starting as a teenager, when I was having all these issues, it's like all I did was focus on feeling a little bit better every day, one step at a time. That one thing I did, I took a shower today, I felt better. That's a win. So every little thing you do that stacks that sense of well-being, that's a win. That's a win. And just keep building on those wins. Don't keep focusing on how it's not going right. Just keep focusing on those wins. So, and
Well
last
said.
words, Mark, before we end, because we always got more words here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So, so grateful that you've been here, Mark. Appreciate you, and I'm grateful for everybody tuning in today.
Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men ultimately to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.